Okay, we're live.
We are live. Call to order the Public Safety Standing Committee meeting. Today is Wednesday, July 19th. It is 3:11 p.m. We're here at City Hall. Welcome, everyone. I call the meeting to order. We will have the roll call. Alderman Gay.
Aye. Sorry.
Alderwoman O'Neill.
Present.
Next, approval of the agenda. Any changes to the agenda should be made here. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No opposed. Business and miscellaneous, and we'll move on to the approval of the minutes. And it was Alderwoman O'Neill was here the last time as well as myself. PSC 5/22/23 special meeting minutes. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve 5/22/23 special meeting minutes.
And second, all in favor? Aye. Election of the chairman pursuant to City Code Section 2.16.120. Can I get a motion to elect the chair of the Public Safety Standing Committee?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Oh, wait a minute.
I make a motion
Who we're
for-
moving to?
Alderwoman Rhonda Pendel Charles to be the chair of the Public Safety Committee.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Here, no mo's. Got that out. Well, thank you.
And unprecedented, but
And long awaited. Legislation 01923, property tax credits for 911 specialists and public safety officers for the purpose of granting property tax credits and property tax relief allowed by Maryland state law for the city of Annapolis 911 specialists and public safety officers in the Annapolis Fire Department and Police Department and generally related to city tax credits. This is a piece of legislation that Alderman Gay, in his infinite wisdom and creativity, brought before us, and it has gone through two standing committees so far. We have our first reader, legislative summary, fiscal impact note, staff report. I spoke with Alderwoman O'Neill prior to the meeting. She has no questions on this legislation. I would assume that Alderman Gay does not have any questions on his own legislation, unless he would like to make some comments.
no, I don't. I thought it had already been to committee. I thought we had already voted on this in the council, but okay. No explanation. I think the staff code explains it. I think it, at this point, only affects 8 officers, which there was a fiscal note.
Yes.
But what was the...
Fiscal
About 16,000.
16.8.
Okay, yeah, my laptop, my iPad is dead, but, yeah, so, fairly low cost, and it gives 2,500 in tax credit, so I think it's good.
Absolutely. I agree. Can we get a motion to recommend 01923 to the full body of the council?
Make a motion to recommend 01923.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Passed, and it will be referred to the city council for our next meeting, I do believe, on Monday. Okay, moving right along. General discussion, ID 3623, Annapolis Police Department update. And we have several items on the agenda to be discussed. And Ms. Jackson, who is our city council associate, will be holding us to a time limit. So we can have time enough to get through all the items as well as Q&A at the end. So we have with us, and Chief Jackson, so good to see you as always, and good to see you as well. And you can introduce those who are here with you.
And good afternoon, Madam Chair. I'll start in my far left, and thank you for this opportunity. To my far left is my operations commander, Captain Lamar Howard. To his right is that the commander, Acting Captain Miguez, who's responsible for administration. To his right is his lovely wife and the captain of community outreach, Captain Amy Miguez. To my right is my command of patrol, and that's Captain Justin Klondens. And to his right is my civilian commander of professional standards, is retired major and current professional standards administrator, Rhonda McCoy. To her immediate right, sitting in the city manager's seat, is the public information officer, Bernie Bennett. So
I think you have two more?
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh yes, I'm sorry. I'm a recent National Academy graduate who's going to be my budget guy in the near future, full-time budget guy, and that's Andrew Ascione, Lieutenant Andrew Ascione. And who did I miss? Oh, Kayla. Okay. And so, Kayla Ziegler, I'm sorry, Kayla Ziegler, I'm sorry. Don't be mad at me. Kayla Ziegler, I said Ragler, Ziegler. She's our new community advocate. We're real proud to have her on board. She's been a delight. If you don't mind me giving her a shout out, she's recent NYU graduate, earned her master's in social work, and she's studying to get her licensure. So we'll be able to report out in the near future. I believe in Almighty God that He's going to bless her with the ability to do well on the exam when it comes out. So she'll be a licensed social worker, master's level licensed social worker. And she's a Nanopolitan too, by the way.
Her family hails from Ward 3. So
Yes, and so that's another thing, is she's a Nanopolitan. So, so Kayla, this is your first one, so you'd like to welcome her. So thank you. Oh, is Tim here? Somebody told me Tim.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, I can't see it. But all them big guns from the captain, I couldn't even see him around those big arms. And of course, retired sergeant, really bright man, and has and I don't talk about him that much, but he has a lot of respect from the men and women of the Annapolis Police Department. He's also a legacy. His dad is a retired lieutenant. And I've had conversations, and you don't have to talk to him very long to become impressed with his knowledge of policing and his institutional knowledge of the Annapolis Police Department. So I'm glad that I really have the pleasure to know Tim Hall, and can say at the end of my career that I had the opportunity to work with him. So that's pretty much the team that's here. Did I forget anybody?
Nope, just hit what he does.
Oh, retired Sergeant Hall, the captain just told me to remind him what he does. He does intelligence work for us. He does the cameras right now. He's looking at the camera, the body-worn camera footage. He's evaluating that. In addition to, we depend on him for a lot of things, really, to give us knowledge of what goes on in the streets, and to his most recent assignment is to evaluate body-worn cameras as a part of the Police Reform Act. We are randomizing footage now to make sure that our officers are doing what they're sworn to do, what the law requires them to do, and we are going from a reactive model. In other words, we don't wait around for somebody to tell us what's wrong. We tried our best through our auditing process to find it ourselves. Not only that, when we find it, it's not for the purpose of disciplining officers all the time. It's for risk management. Sometimes we have bad policies or policies that's inadequate. So to minimize the risk of any liability, we try to catch it and fix it ourselves. And I'm always happy to come before any legislative body, particularly the council that I serve under. And when we have problems, we're able to say, we found it. You know, the FBI didn't find it, the Maryland State Police didn't find it, Anne Arundel County didn't find it. We found it ourselves. And then we'll have the knowledge to address it and correct it. So that's pretty much the team that we have here.
Thank you, Chief. And Ms. Jackson's going to be the timekeeper today, so we can pretty much stay on task and on time. So I guess she'll give you a signal at some point to let you know you've got a few more seconds. There we go.
Okay.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am. So my time starts now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I should be able to do this in plenty of time. I'll just give kind of opening remarks and kind of give an overview. Again, I've said it many times, I take a two-pronged approach to public safety. You have to understand the environment that you're operating in from a sociological standpoint. You have to understand poverty, you have to understand the disease of addiction, you have to understand mental illness, you have to understand all the behaviors that result from the social problems I just described. So my philosophy, again, is to work with neighborhoods that are underserved and people who are facing challenges. But we never do it by compromising what we do best and what's at the core of why we exist, and that's to provide public safety. So what am I saying? We want to reach out to people, but we also want to take bad actors off the street. So our model is not just, it's multifaceted. You know, I'm always happy to announce to the public that we got a trigger puller off the street, or we got a killer off the street, we got a sexual predator or a drug dealer, you know, somebody selling that god-awful fentanyl to our children. I'm always glad to announce that those people have been banished from the city of Annapolis when we make the case against them. But I also realize that we have to use this platform that you all have given me to address social problems like drug addiction and mental illness. You know, handguns in the hands of people who shouldn't have them. You know, even our schools, when our schools are not addressing some of the community issues, then the police chief has to be able to talk to that too, because we don't control those things, but we see them more than anybody else. We are 24-hour day, 7-day a week, 365-day a year operation. Unlike many social agencies, we never ever close. You know, it's expensive to run a police department, especially nowadays, because, you know, our safety and security is always under threat. We have to reevaluate everything that we do, and it's important that we assemble the team of talented men and women to address those issues. To be a cop now, or to be a police officer in America right now, any city, and Annapolis is not immune, you have to have a skill set that wasn't required in previous generations of law enforcement. You have to understand economics, you have to understand sociology, you have to understand physics, chemistry. I mean, all the disciplines. We are probably one of the few professions that exist where we dabble in everything imaginable. Religion, I don't care what it is, we dabble in it. So we have to have a force that's equipped to manage all of that. And I think that Annapolis is very blessed to have the men and women sitting at this table with me to address those problems and those issues. What you're going to hear in a few minutes, I know my time is almost up, but what you're going to hear in a few minutes is you're going to hear from the men and women that I'll highlight, talk a little bit about what they do. I started my day off this morning by having a meeting with some of the most accomplished police executives in Maryland. The Baltimore Police Commissioner was there, Baltimore County Chief was there, the Superintendent of the Maryland State Police were there, just to name a few, and the Director of the FBI. We had a meeting with the Director of the FBI this morning, Christopher Wray. It was a delightful conversation. I'm not poised to talk about everything that was said for security reasons, but we had a nice conversation today about some of the challenges that we face in our cities, respective cities, and I left there with a sense of, a sense of accomplishment in that Annapolis PD was represented in that meeting. The feedback that we received from that meeting, it was just phenomenal. there was a curiosity from the director and some high-level government officials about the work that we're doing. Many people are intrigued, for example, about our reentry program. That has caught on far more than I could have ever imagined. And let's be honest, I think the Annapolitans, I think elected officials realize how important the reentry program has become. That's just one tool of many that I would like to see us use, in addition to having the technology, the training, and the structure to really address the bad guys too, because unfortunately you have a lot of bad actors roaming our streets, and we have to deal with them swiftly and certainly and constitutionally. And so you'll hear some of the things, I'll just close by saying in my opening remarks, you'll hear from the men and women at this table and a couple of them who are sitting in the background about some of the things that we are doing. And hopefully it'll be very informative and you'll have many questions that we're prepared to address. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and distinguished members of the Public Safety Committee. A wise man once said, "You can't expect what you don't inspect." This was the standard by which the chief and I operated upon during our time in the BPD Inspector General's office. Formalized inspections and audits are necessary components of good administration because it ensures systems, procedures, equipment are operating in the way that we plan for them to. It also allows us to identify gaps in our policies and fix them. It also allows us to identify areas of training and correct deficiencies through training. Recently, we have formalized our inspection protocol. We had an inspection policy. We formalized our operations. We are currently, our audit plan, we have a formalized audit plan and we have a formalized inspection plan, which are at the chief's desk for approval. Once he approves those audits and our audit plan for 2023-24 and our inspection plan for 2023-24, they'll be published. We are delighted that we now have formalized this system that will include audit reports, inspection reports, and just a way of formalizing and letting you know so the city can be assured and the chief can be assured that our systems are operating correctly, that we don't need any policy change. Anybody or any entity who are not inspecting, are not auditing, your policies can't go on for forever. How would you know how to correct them if you didn't test against them? So that's what we're doing. And because I have these two areas back to back, I'm going to go right into CALEA. Every 4 years, the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement evaluates the department against 41 CALEA standards. We are a member of CALEA. It took us, it was very, very rigorous for us to get that accreditation, and it's a rigorous process for us to keep it. Our 4-year evaluation will occur this October. We are poised to receive the inspectors, and we look forward to a good result. CALEA also conducts a 2-year assessment, which was done last year for 2020 and 2021, where we received full accreditation with no conditions. And that is a big thing because most departments who go through CALEA, like I said, it's 141 standards. They tested us against 120 of them last year. Most departments do get some form of conditions where they're a policy, they lacked in a policy, and we got fully accredited with no conditions. We're pleased to let you all know that Ms. Ziegler's role is a dual role with the department. And she will be serving as and assisting with CALEA accreditation, and I will let her speak on her role with the department.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Kayla Ziegler, and I am the new external complaint advocate for the Annapolis Police Department. My role as the advocate will be to assist community members in submitting complaints or compliments about their interactions with the police department. I will also assist community members with understanding the discipline process, assisting members with submitting online complaints, and updating complainants on the status of their complaint investigation. As the advocate, I do not receive details about case information. However, I can provide contact information for the investigator assigned to each case that will be able to answer questions and address a complainant's specific needs. I'm also very excited to be working on CALEA. I've been reading and studying the general orders of the police department to gain knowledge of the policies and to not only fulfill my CALEA duties, but to also best assist complainants when addressing their questions and concerns. I've been working to become, in a way, supercharged on the police department's policies. By doing so, I can fulfill the position of accreditation manager, but also utilize it as a connection and a guide to better assist me doing my job as the external complaint advocate. Thank you.
Can you tell us what that acronym stands for, CALEA?
CALEA, the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement
Thank you.
Agencies.
Thank you.
It's considered, Alderwoman, it's considered gold standard for accreditation. Yes, I was just told something that's interesting. Captain, yes, our good captain was the one who spearheaded that, well, how many years ago?
I started in the 90s, but I was an assessor and team leader
Captain
for CALEA
Hopkins.
for 15 years.
She's the first one. Awesome. Thank you, Captain Hopkins. So good to see you as always.
You should be training.
Thank you. Who's the next man?
So Capitol Hill.
Okay. Yeah, back on July 1st, I attended in Washington, D.C., a one-day symposium on body-worn cameras. This marks the 10th anniversary that the first body-worn cameras in America was put out on the street. I believe, and I don't know the very first agency, but I know it started in New England states up north. Chuck Wexler, the executive director of the Police Executive Research Forum, that's the acronym for PERF, commonly referred to as PERF, he gathered police chiefs from all across the country. I sat next to and had the opportunity to meet the sheriff of LA County. And we talked about the importance of body-worn cameras, some of the benefits, some of the glitches, some of the things that we have to work out. In the future, they say give them about 30 days. Out of those discussions, there's going to be a position paper, and it's going to reevaluate the BWC program. I am happy to report that it's been favorable. It's been favorable to both law enforcement and the community, because what it does for law enforcement, it shows police victimization as well. And most of us have seen many footage. If you watched the body-worn camera in Baltimore from about a month ago, shows a very chilling assault, deadly assault against police officers by an individual wanted on an assault warrant. He had several guns in his backpack, and when the officers went to serve a warrant, he ran and took the backpack off of his shoulders and loaded a banana clip and a high-powered rifle and began shooting at Baltimore police. Unfortunately, the suspect was killed, but it just captures the entire event from its inception to the end, and it just shows you how dangerous it can be for law enforcement too. So it not only captures misconduct, but it captures police victimization. So it balances the narrative, it balances the narrative off. So for the first time, citizens across this nation can look at the account unbiased, look at the video, and I think that's the biggest takeaway we came. But there's some other things that we need to as a nation, to work out. So I just attended that symposium and walked away, met some new friends. We agreed to stay in touch and exchange policies as their policies are updated. We agreed to share them through the Police Executive Research Forum, so my staff can go onto the PERF website, which I'm a member of. I'm stealing her thunder a little bit, but and I'll let her talk about it more in a minute. But Captain Miguez is a recent graduate of the of PERF, and so she being a graduate, she will have access to that kind of information too. So we'll make sure that the Annapolis PD has best practices when it comes to body-worn camera footage.
Thank you, Chief. Again, I'm Tim Hall. My grandparents grew up in Annapolis. My mom and dad grew up in Annapolis. I grew up just outside of Annapolis, and I've been with the agency 31 years, and I've had family members killed in the streets of Annapolis in Harbor House. So I say that to say my whole focus since I've been 18 was to make Annapolis a safer city and to make the Annapolis Police Department a place that people would want to work and that was highly respected. And as they said, I wear many hats in the agency, but my primary function now is to run our body-worn camera program. If you're around in 2017, that's when we obtained body-worn cameras. We were the front runners in this area in actually getting them. What we did wrong back then is we put nobody to that program. We put the equipment in with nobody to oversee it and nobody to actually do anything with it other than we said we had body-worn cameras. So moving forward with Ms. McCoy and Chief Jackson, we now have a body-worn camera program that the function is we can see what deficiencies we have in the agency. We can see what we're doing well. We can use footage from body-worn cameras when we see officers doing things well to train other officers on how to handle calls. So our plan moving forward is to have periodic auditing, and again, not for disciplinary reasons, but for training reasons, so we can see what we're doing well and what we can fix. It brings me to Tyree Nichols, the young man in Memphis that was killed by several officers on body-worn camera. The agency started going back and looking at those officers' body-worn camera footages from prior incidents and found things that had they been able to view that, or they took the time or had the personnel to view that, they would have known, they would have seen red flags that may have either led to training or discipline that may have prevented Tyree Nichols from being killed by those officers. Thank you for your time.
So again, I'm Captain Amy Miguez, Commander of Community Outreach. And the next thing on the agenda is the FBI National Academy. I'm also going to speak a little bit about SMIP, which is the Senior Management Institute for Police that I recently attended. And I just want to just say real quick that, this type of executive training is very important. And I think both myself and Lieutenant Ascione are extremely fortunate and grateful to Chief Jackson for making it a priority to send us to these types of trainings. Tim Hall just mentioned Memphis and Tyrese Nichols. One of my roommates at SMIP was the colonel in charge of internal affairs for Memphis PD. She handled the investigation. So those connections that we make in those trainings is very important. We're talking to people who've gone through the most horrific incidents, learning from them as well as from the classes that we're attending. So Lieutenant Ascione, would you like to talk about the FBI National Academy?
Good afternoon. Again, I'm Lieutenant Ascione with Annapolis City PD. So the investment that's made by the agency in sending its commanders to these schools, if you will, they're weeks, sometimes months long. It's a lot of time for the individual member to be away from the agency. But as the captain just outlined, aside from the academics, the classes that you take, the learning that's specific and targeted in these courses, a great deal of the value that we get out of it is actually from the interaction with members of other law enforcement agencies from around the country, or in some cases even around the world. There has been, ever since leaving the National Academy, I cannot tell you how many conversations there have been had about one agency is looking at implementing a new program, and they have 250 classmates that they can reach out to and say, has anybody tried this yet? Has it been successful? If so, why? If not, why not? What would you do differently? What are some of the emerging crime trends that you're seeing? What are some of the legal trends that you're seeing? Some of my associates who are out in the Sixth Circuit are kind enough to let me know what that they see coming down the pipe, and sure enough, we're sort of downstream from that in many cases. So these types of courses that we send our executive members to, there's no way that they can't be successful. When you get a couple hundred lieutenants, captains, majors, and in some case chiefs of police all in one place for 2.5 months, there's something magical happens there. You get a great deal of insight into how other agencies are run, the directions that they're going, and you also have resources that you would have never had otherwise. There's a material difference in picking up the phone and calling someone for help when you've spent 10 weeks living with them versus if you went to a week-long seminar and happened to talk to them a couple times. The response is just different. So going to these things, it's not about Captain Miguez, it's not about me, it's about what we bring back to the agency. And I just want to take a moment and thank the chief for sending us, for parting with us for the amount of time that we were there. And hopefully we can send more of our members so that we can benefit the agency even more in the future.
Thank you, Lieutenant. I'm a graduate of Smiths too. I think I graduated from Smiths about 23 years ago. Captain Howard's a graduate of the Senior Management Institute of Police. I know that retired Sergeant Tim Halls is an NA graduate. He also graduated years ago from the National Academy, and now latest graduate, of course, we're very proud of him for so many reasons. That's Lieutenant Andrew Ascione. So this is a nice opportunity just to highlight the fact that if you want a world-class police department, education and training has to be premium, and we can't expect our members to be leaders without the proper training and exposure. I like what the lieutenant just said, is that when you spend 10 weeks with somebody, the response is different when you say, hey, I know you're in charge of patrol, and we're seeing this trend in the city of Annapolis. Can you offer us any help? And that's the benefit, to be able to network with people across the country. So my pledge to the city of Annapolis is that when I came here, and I've said this many times, that one of the things I want my legacy to be, two things really, is that I produce leaders, and then I expand the size of this police department to make it a world-class police department. And I think that we're moving in the right step for both of them. This morning I met with the director of the FBI, and this time last year, almost a year to the day, wasn't it, Rhonda? I testified before the United States Senate Judiciary Committee representing the Annapolis PD, and it was aired on C-SPAN, so the whole nation got to see Annapolis PD, Chief Ed Jackson, Annapolis PD, about police reform and taking a more social approach to solving some of these problems. So congratulations again to Captain Miguez and to Lieutenant Ascione.
And next we have marijuana training for officers.
Good afternoon. I'm Lieutenant Dave Miguez, and I'm one of the many things I'm in charge of is training. There were state legislation changes which took effect July 1st regarding the possession and use of marijuana, mainly to decriminalize it so that there's a civil fine for people over 21 years of age possessing what the state considers a personal use amount of marijuana, and anything over that is punishable only by a fine, no longer by any jail time. And then for people under 21, it's also a civil citation, punishable only by a fine. So we sent training out in June prior to the law changes taking effect, sent training out to all of our officers detailing the changes and what actions that they're now either required to take or are able to take. And just within the first 19 days, we haven't had any citations yet, but that's just making sure that all of our officers are up to date on any law changes, which we do on an annual basis, not just with criminal law changes, but traffic law changes as well. And anything that happens to come out in between those, the beginning of whether it's the city's fiscal year or the state fiscal year in October. So
We also, spoke yesterday. We had a meeting here that was chaired or coordinated by the Office of Law. And an individual from the state licensing came in and talked about the law. And we, another thing that we would like to do and that was suggested from the police department is that we do a very, very rigorous public information to residents on the new law and, you know, what the requirements are, you know, what you can still get cited for versus what you can't get cited for, and what is legal and what is not legal. You know, and portions of the law, you can possess it, but it's still against the law to smoke it outside. And so things of that nature are very, very important. And so we look forward to working with the Office of Law, working with the city manager's office to on a public, you know, information campaign to let residents know what the law is.
And the next thing on the agenda is the workload study update. So myself and Rhonda McCoy have been working together to find a good vendor to do the workload study. Right now, University of Maryland is in the process of drafting a contract with us about that. We were able to meet with them several times and go over our needs and then also their constraints. They've assigned a doctor, a PhD in criminal justice to work on it with us. And we're in the stages now where they're drafting the contract. So we're hoping to move forward with that very quickly.
Good afternoon. I'm Captain Justin Kleinitz of the Commander of Patrol Division, and I'm just going to take a brief moment to discuss my time spent with Leadership Anne Arundel. So for those of you that don't know, Leadership Anne Arundel basically is an organization all about leadership within Annapolis and Anne Arundel County, and it really is the nexus of leadership where it ties business leaders, nonprofits, government individuals, and community leaders together, and really gives you an overall kind of a 10,000-foot view of the businesses and all the dealings, truthfully, in Anne Arundel County. Now, no offense, Chief. I know you're a former graduate, and no offense to Ms. McCoy here as a future graduate. And Madam Chair, I understand that you promised that you would be a future graduate as well. But I have the privilege to graduate this year from Flagship Class 2023, which is in fact the best class. It's irrefutable. We all agreed on it. So we'll just put that to bed right now. So it's a 9-month program, roughly, just a quick overview, where you meet once a month for 9 months. We have an opening retreat, and some of the topics that are covered is we had a government day, economic development day, cultural arts, education, health and human services, law and public safety, Environment, and Agricultural Day. So each one of these sessions that we had every month, we had some of the experts in those fields basically help educate us on the ongoings and how everything worked. So we got to hear from a lot of experts in the field, from Anne Arundel County Community College President, Dr. Dawn Lindsay, Dr. Mark Bedell, the superintendent for our school system, former health officer, Dr. Kalyana Raman. They all spoke to us, and it really, what it does is it brings together everybody from different walks of life, and it gives you that networking. Unlike what Captain Miguez and Lieutenant Ascione got to experience at a more larger universal scale across the country, my little piece of the pie was geared towards the Annapolitans and the Anne Arundel County residents, and how each one of those systems greatly impacts the development of the county, the economical, social status of its residents, the vast amount of programs that are available all across the county. And it really is an eye-opener. The most beneficial thing to me as a commander sitting in this seat here is, again, it's those relationships that I've formed with it's about 50 plus students in our class. So if there's any programs that we're offering to the public, I now most likely have a contact with someone involved in that area throughout the county or throughout the city. I really don't think it's something we can quantify the benefits of that, because it's not something we can ever really put a number to. It's just the commitment from everybody in these classes to make the county and the city better was absolutely evident. I know it was in my class, the group of fine men and women that I had the privilege to attend with. It's just another one of those things that the chief brought to us that I really don't think we fully understand the benefits of it yet. I know what I took from it. I forgot the deputy chief, no offense to Deputy Chief Stan Branford, but his class was an okay one, but ours was the best. We just don't know the benefits of it yet, because we never know when we're going to need to plug somebody in from another resource. We had people in our class that worked out of Stuart Pittman's office, the county executive. We've had people from transportation, the Maryland Hall for Creative Arts, Live Casino. We just have them from all over the place. So it was a tremendous honor to be able to attend that. And I know Rhonda's going to have a blast when she goes. It's not going to be as fun as mine, because, again, it was the best class. I can't say that.
Well, I just want to go on the record, too, just to correct one thing. I agree with everything he says, but the best class actually was my class.
We'll just have to agree to disagree. So hopefully we continue that. I know after Ms. McCoy goes, we have plans to continue that, just like we do with the higher level education of police executive training and stuff. And I really don't think it can't in any way be a bad thing for this city or for the county. So,
and one of the things I like to talk about real briefly with that is that I expect everybody sitting at this table or who holds a leadership position to be more than a police official. At the core of what they do is a police official, but I want them to be civic leaders. And what Captain Klein just described, that leadership and Arundel exposes you to civic leadership. I think that all police chiefs and command staff should be civic leaders. So congratulations again. And I look forward to hearing about Ms. McCoy's experiences in the near future. Then in the near future after that, Bernie Bennett, and then eventually Lamar Howard. But everybody will go if I have it my way. So thank you again, Captain.
So the next thing on the agenda is the Law Enforcement Women's Conference. So that's the MOLLE Conference, the Mid-Atlantic Women in Law Enforcement Conference.
We need money.
Yes, it's a long-standing group that has an annual conference. They are comprised of women in law enforcement through Virginia, Maryland, DC, Delaware, Pennsylvania, New Jersey. We are hosting the conference this year in September 10th through 14th in Annapolis. We stepped up and offered it. A lot of times it's hosted and held on the shore But we knew that people would want to visit Annapolis, and this would be a great place for people to come and experience not only some great training, but also the city. So the organization itself, Molly, is a nonprofit organization, and for the conferences, most of the times they rely on the organizers to raise money to defray the cost of the conference. You know, many of these departments don't have a lot of funding for training like us, and so we've raised over $72,000 to help this, and we're still looking. We need about $20,000 more. We're looking to have 168 attendees come, and we're having a lot of interest and a lot of people registering. One of our keynote speakers, the now former NYPD Commissioner, Keechant Sewell, she was invited before she stepped down, but she's still coming. We're really excited to hear about her experiences as the first female NYPD Commissioner. And, you know, maybe we'll hear a little bit about the reasons why she stepped down. But we also have speakers talking about the response to the shooting at the Las Vegas Music Festival. We're really excited to hear about that. You know, these aren't just topics that are geared towards women specifically, but about law enforcement. We do get into a lot of wellness issues. There's practical training, as well as hearing from people about gangs. You know, we have the luck to have a highly regarded nationwide expert in gangs that works for the Annapolis Police Department, retired Maryland State Police Trooper Sergeant Aaron Stein. He's a detective with us now. He started a second career, and we get to utilize all his vast knowledge from his first career. We're very thankful. And his group's going to do a great presentation on gangs for the women. Rhonda, did you have anything you wanted to add on?
I just wanted to reiterate that the women here really stepped up. Captain Miguez, Sergeant Hernandez,
yeah.
A number of Annapolis PD detectives and officers, and they're really excited about showcasing Annapolis as a premier location for this conference and our department, and that they are $20,000 short. There's a shortfall. We do want to be able to, you know, have a good conference, have these women come here, showcase the city. We, you know, not only are we, you know, showcasing the city, but it is a revenue stream, you know, because they're going to be coming here for a number of days. And we do want the conference to, you know, to go off well. And if you all have any suggestions about how we raise the other $20,000, we would love to hear from you.
Well, you'll be hearing from me. I just whispered in Captain Miguez's ear to do something, and I told the mayor, and I told a couple other people. I'm sorry, Mayor, I put you out on TV, but I did tell them that we were short, and Rob would be coming to help raise money. So.
Yeah, I will just say that not only, you know, Sergeant Hernandez and Officer Benson and all the other officers that have worked to do these events, not to mention Tim Hall, who's helping with the finances. You know, we have a lot of people stepping up in the department. It's a really good opportunity for us. You know, we hiring women has been a big focus for us for a long time. It's one of the areas where we need to increase our diversity in our staffing, women. So we are always looking to see how we can showcase having women doing more and getting us out there with women. So we're, you know, taking people on tours of the Naval Academy. We're doing a lot of different things, taking them out on Harbor Queen. Maybe we'll get a few lateral offers out of it. So that's coming up September 10th through 14th. And next is the reorganization.
Can I say one thing about that?
Oh, yes, sir.
Just to add one thing to, and I'm just going to give the chief a shout out here. Early on in the planning stages of this, he made a promise to any one of our female officers that if they wanted to attend, that we, barring staffing issues or anything, we would make it happen. And so far, I think we've got 100% correct, Amy?
I think
If I'm
so.
wrong. 100% participation from all of our female officers. And I just want to thank him for making that commitment, because he knows that comes with some challenges. And thank the rest of the men and women of the police department that have stepped up to fill those gaps so that our female officers can attend the conference.
Thank you, Captain Klein. Appreciate that. Very important. We pride ourselves in being diverse, as you can see at this table. So it's one thing to say it, it's another thing to actually show it and prove it. The old adage, action speaks much louder than words. So now the reorganizational chart, this is where I probably should have had my favorite libation before I came down here to speak on the reorganizational process. You know, just a real quick history about it. I started thinking reorganization shortly after I got here, because I said, wow, the demand for service, when we have those bad weekends where there's discharging, and I get calls from Captain Howard, or I'll get calls from people like Captain Klein, or even Captain Miguez, anybody at this table, to include Major McCoy, has acted as deputy chief. Everybody with the exception of Dave Miguez, as he's admin, but everybody up here at this table has acted as deputy chief, even Ms. McCoy. And you know, it's very stressful when you get calls from residents wanting to know what we're doing about these very dangerous events that occur, and we all know the areas that I'm referring to. I don't have to mention them each and every street, but we know that there's challenges, particularly in Ward 6, with gun violence. And so we do want to do something about it. But as the chief of police, whether it's me or somebody else sitting in this chair, we have to have a good working formula as to how we determine what our staffing should be. What is enough police? That's a credible argument. We never know how many police you need. I mean, you ask the average chief, you never have enough police. But what I would like to see us reorganize ourselves in a way, in the wake of this workload study, is for us to put together a structure so that we can have the proper amount of men and women to at least address the issues primarily in all 8 wards, you know, and some of the other ancillary stuff, like, for example, I'm just as concerned about the number of fatalities that occurred on Forest Drive and the infrastructure there as I am with the shootings. Everybody should have an expectation that their loved ones come home and you know, the way they left. And so what this reorganization is all about, I'm going to meet with my command staff, the very people who are here with me today, and we're going to talk about how the Annapolis Police Department should be structured. I know a little bit of the history. The Great Recession of 2008 affected a lot of how we operate now, because we were forced to, due to the economy, to cut costs. But we never recouped those losses from that very challenging period, the Great Recession of 2008. Another part is that we've done more with less by assigning the men and women, both sworn and civilian, mostly sworn, with doing multiple duties. Sometimes it works, other times it's problematic. Sometimes there's conflicts. If somebody works in internal affairs and they have to be forced to get into an enforcement mode and something happens, then that automatically takes them out of the arena to do a fair and objective investigation. That's one of the things that comes to mind very rapidly when we talk about how we're structured now. Not only that, but my biggest frustration is I don't have any discretionary men and women that I can assign to go out and address problems, address it in a constitutional way, but address them nonetheless. We put out a certain number of officers. I don't want to say in case it's viewers are watching, but we put out a certain number of officers, and I think you all know how many we put out. And on any given day, I just don't know how we do it. My hat goes off to the men and women of the Annapolis Police Department, both my command staff and the rank and file, because we make it work, but sometimes under very, very, very stressful conditions. For example, the events on Paddington a month ago, I don't know what I would have done if we didn't have our partners there that night operating on that detail that Captain Howard put together along with the sheriff, Anne Arundel County PD, state police, amongst others. So it's imperative, and an imperative is a demand that we must act and look at the reevaluation of how the Annapolis Police Department operates. I've said this before at council hearings. I'm a fan of Abraham Maslow, and he was the great sociologist and psychologist who asserted that you'll never reach self-actualization if your basic needs are not met. He had the pyramid, and that the big part of the pyramid is safety and security. At the top of the point is self-actualization, where you want to be. But if you're distracted by other issues, you can never focus on the things that's going to get you to the top of the triangle, and that's self-actualization. I liken it to trying to send a child to school hungry. They're not going to pay attention to the teacher if they're having stomach pains from hunger, or if they stayed up all night and listened to their father beat the crap out of their mother, or vice versa. Their mother beat the crap out of their father and they're in an abusive relationship. How are they supposed to go to school if they don't have safety and security and listen to a teacher? And I think sometimes that's lost sometimes. I want the best public safety. I know it'll never be perfect, but I want the best public safety agency that you've given me the honor to preside over. And so what this work study and this reorg chart is going to attempt to do is bring before this body and eventually the public to say, this is what Annapolis's challenges are. And I'm not being flippant in my remarks, but what prompted that was the 3.2 per 1,000 ratio when it comes to adequate public facilities. In anticipation of this meeting, I actually read the opinion from Judge Vitale last night, and she said some interesting things, and it's something that I asserted all along. We don't know where the 3.2 came from. Still, we have an idea who authored it, but we don't know what the rationale behind it was. And so how can we say we should have 124 officers for a population of 40,000 residents, more than 40,000 people coming to the city of Annapolis on any given day? It's nice that we acknowledge the people who have an address here and pay taxes here and lay their heads down at night, but we also have the Naval Academy. We have to count them. We have to count the men and women who come from all over Maryland when the legislature's in session, and even when it's not, to come down here to lobby. We have to take into account the stadium games, the Navy Marine Corps Stadium and the games. They're taking the fairs, the boat shows, just the people who come and enjoy downtown on the weekends. And so we have to have a department that's structured in a way that our human resources and our technology can meet those demands. And so, my vision, some of the things I'll just say real quickly with the time, is that I like to have more people looking at the cameras. I like to have more people looking at the cameras, but not only looking at the cameras, have the expertise that should they be summoned into court, they can explain under oath what they saw based on their training and expertise. They could be sworn or civilian, as long as they have the expertise to say these are the furtive movements of or the characteristics of an armed person. And so when I'm sitting there watching those cameras, the reason why I was able to predict that this person was armed and about to engage in the gun battles, because this is the training that I've had. As a former college professor, the one thing I got out of 14 years of being a college professor, there's the theoretical and there's the practical. Everything can be explained. Where the theory becomes widely acknowledged or widely expected is how you apply that theory. And so there's a lot of theories about an armed person. There's a lot of theories about a whole lot of things that we talk about, why the gun violence has proliferated all of a sudden. It's another thing to be able to come up with a theoretical view and then have the right developed staff to justify the theory, say this is why the theory is so valid. Here's the validity of it, because every time I sat at this camera and I watched these individuals moving in a furtive way or some unnatural bulge, it turned out to be an illicit gun getting ready to be used. And we can track that. And so when I talk about reorganization, we're talking about the command staff. Ideally, I should have a chief of police. I should have two deputy chiefs, not one. I should have a deputy chief who focuses strictly on the operations of the department. I should have another deputy chief that does admin. And it doesn't have to be a sworn member, especially on the admin side. It could be a person with an MBA who understands budgeting, that understands how to apply for grants, that can understand how to connect the Annapolis PD with the Annapolis economy, because the police chief is also supposed to protect commerce here. People are not going to come here and go down Dock Street and get a crab cake at Buddy's if gunshots ring out every day. So my job is to make sure that commerce is protected. And so the reorganization, once we present that, and I know my time is up, it has many facets to it. I need more than 10 minutes to talk about it, but that's just a vignette or a snapshot of the reason why I think it's so important to have reorganization.
Rejoining our discussion from the budget process into the ring neighborhood ring cameras and a neighborhood watch, and I'm glad that Alderman Ye is here in attendance. You know, this was he introduced this amendment to provide funding for the program. When I spoke to the city council about it, it was a very brief kind of description of the program. I'd like to, this is also a condensed version, which I've given you a written copy, but basically it is a description of a neighborhood watch proposal, and, you know, with two initiatives for a solution to address crime that occur within residential neighborhoods. Through collaboration with the residents. The program combines a technology component with some traditional aspects of older neighborhood watch duties. The program provides law enforcement with additional tools to solve crimes more rapidly, while maintaining block watcher or resident possibility of providing relieving them of the possibility of providing court testimony when a crime occurs. The two key components, that first component is a modified block watcher initiative using neighborhood volunteers to perform tasks. In conjunction with APD Community Services Unit, the block watchers, NBWs, recruit fellow neighbors to sign up for the Ring Camera Initiative by educating the residents on the benefits of having the Ring system and how it assists APD in solving crimes. A second thing that they would do is collaborate with the community service officers to receive updates and information about crime trends in their neighborhood. They could talk with our community services, and they can also be reading the bulletins put out by Mr. Bennett, and they can, you know, put those out through Ring messaging or through neighborhood contact. The third thing that they would do is kind of walk in pairs through the neighborhood, speaking with neighbors on practical deterrents that they see in the neighborhood, like, you know, i.e. somebody didn't lock their car, you know, going and telling the neighbor, hey, your car's open, or you left something, you know, valuable in your car, or, you know, we have a specific crime, you know, we've talked with APD, we have a specific crime in the neighborhood, we'd like to educate you about, you know, so you can arm yourself, so you know, and what I mean is arm yourself with knowledge so that you don't become a victim. In those neighborhoods, and that this would be well received because we'll be your neighbors and things, speaking to you about what is going on. What we would do, APD, is hire additional camera monitors. I want to, you know, thank Chief Jackson for agreeing to, we had a camera monitor slot. We had some gaps in our camera monitoring. We had one person who worked kind of like a 4 to 12 shift. Where now we have a second person, which Alderman O'Neill, we took your idea. We do listen quite intently, and we took a slot from that we had from the budget, and we hired the second camera monitor. We'll be looking. You'll be seeing an enhancement in our next budget, but for this year, that's what we're doing. The chief is also going to probably take another slot for a midnight shift, and then for a gap person, because we want to have a 24-hour coverage, 7-day-a-week program, and it will take 4 individuals to be able to do that. We also want those neighborhood block watchers to coordinate block events, safety block events that bring officers and residents together working around our community service, and where they specifically talk about things that affect the neighborhood, or safety, things that affect the neighborhood, and that, people can come out and still have fun, in their neighborhood and talk about safety. That second component of the program, which is what Alderman Gay and I, were really trying to push forward, was that $100,000 to assist the residents to obtain Ring doorbell mounted camera systems through that security rebate program. The residents who purchased a camera will receive that $150 rebate for the purchase, and then they would sign up to participate in our Ring initiative program. The residents would then be registered in a database with us, and when a crime occurred in that resident's neighborhood, like currently, when crime occurs, Captain Howard can tell you, we dispatch an army of detectives, and they go out and they knock on the door and they look and they see like, oh, this person has a ring. We knock on the door and ask them, could we get the, the camera footage? We wouldn't have to do that because we would have a database of all the people in the neighborhoods who had a, ring, and, get them to agree to cooperate with us. And we could not have to go up to their door where individuals, where they might be scared that somebody is seeing us go up there talking to them. We could call them because we will register their phone numbers and say, hey, we want to download the footage and do it that way, which I think, they would be more apt to cooperate. Now, of course, we could, we do at times have to go, do subpoenas, but this is like a voluntary program where I think that most of the residents are going to say like, yes, I'll agree to give the footage. I just don't want the police knocking on my door where everybody in the free world, sees that the police came and got something from me. It's a very smart way to gather information from residents. And then, the residents can, along with those cameras and the safety programs, what we want the neighborhood block watchers to do, along with our community service, is talk about, like, when they do see things and coordinate, hey, this person, was in, this person's yard, and start to talk about a safety plan amongst themselves, because sometimes, it doesn't take the police, to stop being, from being a victim. It takes just people getting together and collaborating and coming up with a smart plan so they don't become victims. I applaud Alderman Gay for suggesting a plan. I'm more than happy, myself and Captain McGuess, to work to see that that it can be realized. And we're here to do our jobs and come up with good things like this that bring the police and the community together, actually working together to solve crime.
I'm gonna have Captain Howard weigh in, and the drones. Yeah, I'm still reading the literature that you sent me. Very interesting. It's lengthy though. It's like 128 pages, but we had a meeting. I'll just say this real quick, then I'll turn it over to you. I had a Zoom meeting with the Frederick Police Department. They have a expansive drone program, a Zoom meeting I was invited to by Alderman Brooke Chandlemire and Alderman DeWine Gay. I think it was last week. And we said, oh, you were there too, Madam
Yes,
Chair.
Hagerstown.
Hagerstown, that's what I'm saying, Frederick, it's in Frederick, that area, but Hagerstown, I'm sorry, Madam Chair. Yeah, and you were there as a public safety chair, so I just wanted to kind of lay the foundation. Since then, Captain Howard did some research, and I'll just close out by talking about managing expectations if we decide to go that route. So I'm gonna turn it over to you.
Good afternoon. Like the chief said, I'm Captain Howard. I'm your operations commander. And just to piggyback off the chief, what he was talking about drones, I think it's very important to manage the expectations regarding this technology. I have the absolute pleasure and honor to come here every day to work along with and to lead the men and women of your CID component and to lead your men and women of the enforcement teams that we have with our SEU and our DEU and our federal task force officers. And the yeoman's work that they do every day, I'm absolutely amazed. There's no statistical data that can quantify or qualify the difference that they make here in the city of Annapolis. So it's an absolute pleasure and it's an absolute honor to work alongside those men and women who are really out here doing the yeoman's work to keep the city safe. I'll get back to drones. Of course, with any emerging technology and tool, there's always pros and cons. I think with this program, I think with drones, I think the pros outweigh the cons, but I think the cons is specifically when you talk about paranoia of the citizens regarding domestic attacks. This technology being weaponized and used in a terroristic way, I think that paranoia is very real. So I think we have to pay attention to that. But I'll get back to the pros. So some of the pros are using this technology, just like our war fighters are using on the battlefield, and some of our counterparts across this country, they're using this technology in the crime fight. I think that we very well could do that here in Annapolis as well. Some of the pros assist in search and rescue instances. I know sometimes here we get a lot of rain, that there's a potential for flooding here. It has flooded here. So drones could be very instrumental in going out and finding potential survivors due to a natural disaster. Another pro would be crime scene management, photography. There's nothing that beats an aerial view of a potential incident, because sometimes when you're ground level, you may miss it on the first day, but that aerial snapshot may give you everything that you need to where instead of having your investigators going out and doing multiple days of crime scene, looking at the crime scene and see what we missed, you may be able to pick that up from the aerial photography from the drone. Surveillance. I would love to have that right now, to be able to sit back a couple hundred yards and to get a lay of the land of some of the individuals in the areas where we've been challenged, and to be able to use that snippet, that technology to help us in our criminal investigations. And also to identify individuals that we may need to add to our our list of folk who are here to cause problems. So I think that's very important. We can also use the drones as it relates to traffic collision reconstruction. Just a few months ago, we had a power outage here. Everything was gridlocked. God forbid if something happened that day, the police weren't able to get to where they needed to get to. Had we had a drone, we could have put the drone up and gave an aerial snapshot and reported that right back to downstairs to OEM. We definitely could have used that during the hourly briefings as that information came in real time from the drones. Hazmat incidents, where you have, Annapolis may not be close to like Baltimore, where we have Locust Point, where we have a huge chemical depot sitting in a city, believe it or not. A drone could be very, very instrumental in possibly identifying the color of smoke without risking our fire department or our police personnel getting too close. So essentially you can save lives as well as minimize workman's comp. So I think drones would be instrumental in that. Hostage negotiations, fugitive apprehensions, active pursuits, if need be. Those are some of the pros that a drone program could offer to the city of Annapolis and to this police department. I'll get back to some of the cons. As I spoke about the paranoia that is real or could be real to folks about this technology being hacked and weaponized and used in domestic terrorism. I think that paranoia is very real, and that is a possibility when you utilize something that's using a radio frequency to do whatever it is that you're doing. So that is real. So I just wanted to bring that out. Also, immediacy. When you utilize a drone, you have to inspect that drone, and you have to make sure that it's airworthy. The last thing you want is to launch a drone and then it crashes in someone's windshield during rush hour traffic. So those are some of the things that we have to look at if we want to utilize a drone program. And I'll say this, utilizing a drone will not replace an aviation unit. It cannot and will not replace an aviation unit. So I think that gets back to the chief's point about managing expectations, utilizing a drone program. And I know I'm probably getting close to my time, but some of the other cons, the durability, battery life, distance and payload. So those are all things that we have to take into consideration if we want to utilize a drone. So with that, thank you for your time, and I'll give the floor back to the chief.
Thank you, Captain. And I'll just close by, I have nothing really additional that Captain Howard talked about. Some of the things I am looking into is if we got a drone program, how would that affect the operations of the United States Naval Academy? We're near Baltimore Washington National Airport, so that has to be a consideration, because like the captain said, when you send radio waves out there, it has the potential to affect many things. And so all those things we'll continue to look into. And thank you, Captain Howard. He's right. The pros do outweigh the cons, but the cons are just enough, and I think that's what you were saying, to really take serious. And so all it has to be is one con that can undermine a whole lot of other things, and we don't want that to be a force multiplier for other negative things. So I'll just close out by saying that. Thank you, Captain Howard.
Good afternoon again, Lieutenant Dave Migueth. I just wanted to talk a few minutes about the grant manager and grant writer needs that we have at the police department. We apply for and are awarded several grants each year. We currently have a part-time grant writer, and he does a very good job, but we have numerous people managing the grants that we get. And so what we are trying to do is get one dedicated position to handle all of the grant managing for the police department. And that's that person's sole responsibility. We recently submitted an application to the Governor's Office of Crime Prevention, Youth and Victim Services for the Gun Violence Reduction Grant, which we got this year, or last fiscal year, FY23, and we were notified that we did not get it for FY24. I know, as I said, I know that our grant writer does a really good job. Also, Patty Norris, who does a number of wonderful things at the department, had a large part in drafting that application. But there are departments out there who are also, within the state of Maryland competing for these grants, and they have full-time grant writers, full-time grant managers, if not an entire unit, with multiple people, and some of them are hiring professional grant writers to write their applications. We did seek some feedback from the state on, why we did not get that grant. Was there something with the application? And we're still trying to go through with them to determine why we didn't get it and what other grants are available to us that may help us in addressing the same initiative, if not as precisely as that grant did, maybe from another direction. But in speaking with city HR manager Tricia Hopkins, the city, as you know, has a consultancy or a consultant firm that's looking at a position study for the entire city. And so they're looking at grant needs, grant management needs, and writing needs across the whole city, across many departments. And that's going to take a while for them to come to their conclusions on what our needs are, and making sure that different departments are classifying their grant-related positions at the same pay scale. And so what we're planning on now is to move forward with an employment agreement position for a grant manager in the meantime, until we can get whatever the results are back from the consultants, and then we can go through the more lengthy process of a civil service position. But that's what our efforts are right now, to address that so that we can effectively handle the grants that we have, as well as go for larger grants, including more funding for personnel in order to alleviate some of the impact on the city's budget for the police department.
I just want to reiterate that our grants, there are a lot of federal and state grants out there that we have already identified. We have absolutely no problem identifying grants that we could use. Our problem lies with who's going to manage them and who's going to write them. That is our problem, not identifying the grants. I want to make it known that the two people sitting at that table, their positions are funded through a grant. That we can get things, we can grow the department, as the chief has said in the past. We could use federal and state funding to do that, but we have to have the bandwidth, especially when you're talking about some of those very, very large grants on the federal level. They're very, very complex. And the performance metrics for them are substantial. And it cannot be a person who has another position that does this. It has to be a permanent position. So again, Alderman O'Neill, we took your suggestion where, you know, we have small coffers left over from my old position, but we still have to snatch from one of our vacant positions. But it's going to come before the council to approve us for that position. It is going to merit benefits for us, large benefits, enough for us to be able to grow the department in the ways that we need, so the citizens can be safer.
So next, PIO Bennett, would you like to talk about the Facebook Live?
I would. Thank you, Captain Miguel. Thank you to the members of the Public Safety Committee, Alderwomen and Aldermen, to our very efficient timekeeper, to former Captain Hopkins and her colleague, and to the gentleman with the well-coiffed beard in the back, and to the people sitting at these tables who I have the privilege to work beside every day. Thank you for joining us as we explain our key role in public safety for the city of Annapolis. And I'm here to talk about a little program we have called Protect and Serve. Annapolis United created Protect and Serve in April of 2022 as a means of communicating the important details of the goings-on of the Annapolis Police Department. It's a bi-weekly basis. It's presented on a bi-weekly basis. There was a spike or uptick in violence in January, February, through to mid-March of 2022. Chairwoman Pendel Charles gave a 1-hour State of the City Public Safety address to the council meeting on March 14th of 2022. Afterwards, Archie Trader, who was the ARPD director at the time, texted her and said that they needed to address something needed to happen immediately in the city of Annapolis, and so to address these concerns. So the very next day, Mr. Trader and the Alderwoman met with Chief Jackson on March 15th to talk about exactly what that something would look like. And they came up with Annapolis United, a 4-part plan representing 4 agencies dedicated to public safety with 4 mandates. Love Our Children, that's under the ARPD. Love Our Neighbors, under the Office of Emergency Management. Peace is Here, under the Annapolis Fire Department. And Stop the Violence, under the Annapolis Police Department. With a soft reveal 3 days later, and then an official launch on April 1st of 2022 with Annapolis United, Annapolis Most Wanted. That was a Facebook Live program held at the Stanton Center that featured Mayor Buckley, and that turned into Annapolis United Protect and Serve with a wider group of topics. And so Annapolis United Protect and Serve is a live presentation that is broadcast on our Facebook page at noon every other Friday. We hear from Chief Jackson and his command staff, who's sitting at the table with us, about serious issues affecting the public. Here's a portion of the Chief's remarks from the most recent program, where he talked about growing concerns in the community over the recent increase in shots fired heard throughout the city.
That Albert Einstein also, amongst being a physicist, he was also a philosopher. And Albert Einstein also said insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result. So we are developing new strategies as we see new crime trends, new prototype criminals. We're going to modify our strategies. We're going to modify our approaches to be constitutionally sound, but we're going to come up with new and creative ways. We're not going to use status quo tactics. You can't solve 2023 problems with 1969 tactics. Does that make sense? And so as we go into the rest of the summer, I want to assure you, as the Chief of Police, that the men and women of the Annapolis Police Department, both my command staff and my rank and file, sworn and civilian, are going to do our very best.
All right, so we host that program in the Emergency Operations Center of the Office of Emergency Management. We also highlight our community outreach efforts, and we present an Officer of the Month. This highlights the good work of the officers of the APD in terms of fighting crime and serving the people of our capital city in ways above and beyond what duty calls for. For all of our recent major events, from the unfortunate shooting of Michelle Cummings to the homicides since that tragedy, From flooding downtown to power outages this past spring, from celebrations like MLK Day Parade, Pride Month, Juneteenth, and the 4th of July, Protect and Serve shares our department's involvement and commitment to keeping our city safe. The Alderwoman spoke at our most recent episode. Delegate Shanika Henson, who was formerly of this council, she appeared on an episode to appeal to the then unknown individuals who stole a part of the statue in front of the Banneker Douglas Museum last year before they apologetically returned it, saying that they were unaware of the importance that it played to our city. And so many people have invited. It wasn't on Protect and Serve, but we recently hosted the governor and the county executive and the mayor to speak about what happened at Paddington Place. The title of the program is reflective of our mission at the Annapolis Police Department. We aim to protect our citizens and serve our neighbors with our reentry program, where there are many summer camps and school activities throughout the year, like movie nights or character counts. We feature programs like Coffee with a Cop, our Watch Your Car program, which is part of a national effort created by the Justice Department, to our free home security survey, where officers come to your home and in less than 2 hours they show people how to make their homes a safer place to live. I have the privilege of organizing this program every 2 weeks, and I learn more about our department and our city every time I do. Some of you may have seen a recent document I created this past April where it shows that our viewership increases with each new program as the topics expand, and of course it's topical, related to what's happening in the city right then in that time frame. So I'm not alone when I say I believe the value of this tool to share our accomplishments and our efforts with the public for the betterment of our entire city and for all of those that we serve. Thank you for your time and your attention.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to the city council work session, APD training with the council. And one of its aims is to demystify what we do. I think the problem with law enforcement that creates misunderstanding is that generally the public and even elected officials who are not police don't fully understand the inner workings of the police department. This police department belongs to the city of Annapolis. We are accountable to the Public Safety Committee. We're accountable to the mayor. We're accountable to every neighborhood in the city. We belong to the people. But the only way we can work together, I believe, and that's just one facet of it, Madam Chair, but the only way I believe that we can effectively work together, you can't manage what you can't measure. You can't critique what you don't understand. And so I'm looking forward to us having a good discussion to talk about the inner workings of the APD, why we do what we do, what our barriers are, because the United States Constitution definitely puts barriers. The Police Reform Act creates barriers, and I don't mean that negatively. I'm very careful how I choose my words. Barriers just means that it puts stops in there, so there's checks and balances, that no one entity in government becomes so overbearing and so powerful that they're at the mercy of the rest of our society. And so those are healthy barriers, but they do exist. Sometimes a quick example is what you're going to do about the shootings, Chief. We just need to round these guys up. Well, it's more complicated than that. It's far more complicated than that. We don't always know what's going to erupt. Nobody knows what's going to erupt. There's not a city in this entire nation or community in this nation or a department that can accurately predict down to the bullet when it's going to be fired and who's going to fire it and what location. That's unfortunate. That's the limitations that policing have. It's manned by human beings. And so we don't have a bunch of robots walking around that has sensors on them. We have people managing this. And I hope that it always remains people, to be honest with you. But some of the things I think will help us to work more collaboratively is that if we really sit down and have a healthy, very informative, very engaging discussion about what we do, what our authorities are, how we're structured, why we're structured, what we can say and what we can't say, how we can
come together, and what are the things that we can do? I'm hoping that it'll establish that of the many conversations that we have and we often meet. What are some of the things like Annapolis United? That was born out of a discussion, Madam Chair, that me, you, and Mr. Trader had, because we were fearful based on the spike in violence late last winter. We were trying to ward it off during the summer months. And out of that came, Protect and Serve, which you attend just about every session. I would encourage the council to look at Protect and Serve. Captain Miguez and Bernie Bennett, our PIO, do work hard to make sure every other week, bi-weekly, that we update our citizens. I like to see, before we have that work session, there's some changes I like to see on our website. Captain Mee has done an excellent job to track our gun violence and our homicides and where we're most likely to experience eruption of discharges. So we have that database, and you can predict with a high degree of accuracy, not certainty, two different things, but a high degree of accuracy where it might happen. Paddington Place, for example, was off the radar screen. There was no deployment plan we could have put in place to prevent that. None. You can't do it with interpersonal violence. Chief, why aren't you stopping some of this violence? Because a vast majority of it is interpersonal and expressive, as the FBI calls it. Most murders in this country are expressive. Two people know each other. There's some connection to them, whether it be acquaintance, whether they run together, something goes awful bad, the availability of handguns, and they shoot them. I used to work murders. They're a lot easier to solve than burglaries, because most times, good police work is solving a burglary. But most murders are easy to solve. The evidence process is complex. How to interrogate and how to ask the questions sometimes can be tricky, and how to testify in court can be tricky. But basically, who did it, you can pretty much look at the person's lifestyle and go into their world, and you'll find out what this was over. And then those are kind of things that I want the workshop to accomplish. We need to work together as a body to understand that. Then out of that could come strategies on both sides of the aisle to make the Annapolis PD more effective.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you, command staff and leadership at Annapolis Police Department. We really do appreciate what you presented today. We started about 10 minutes late, so we're going to go a little bit further, hopefully. And at this time, we'll have Q&A, and normally I start with Alderman Gay, but I'm gonna switch off today and start with Alderwoman O'Neill, and hopefully we'll have enough time for all the Q&A, and if not, then we can certainly continue it.
First of all, I have seniority.
I know you do. You absolutely do. But I'm starting with her today. Only one time you've done the seniority every meeting we've had. And this is the first time I've.
That's how it works.
Well, and I'm more senior than you.
Arguing about this.
This sounds like a police officer argument right now.
Thank you.
I believe
Thank you very much.
Kleindienst has seniority at this table.
All right, I have a few quick questions. Hopefully, I'll just run down them. Going back to the workload study, do we have a timeline for when to expect the data on that?
So we wanted delivery by the beginning of next year, like January. We're hoping that that'll still be the case. There was some delays with we were waiting to hear back from other people. Instead of just going with University of Maryland, we reached out to 3 other companies and individuals that do this kind of work. And so we were waiting to hear back from them about what they could offer and that kind of thing. So that kind of delayed the start. But we're hoping that it can be still done before January so that we have something in hand. I know that's, budgets are already due then, so it's hard to do it in this gap between budgets and actually get good data. They're going to analyze our records management, our calls for service. They're going to look at our staffing, how many days of leave people get, things like that all goes into the analysis. We were hoping to also have a survey done But because of the time limitations we put on University of Maryland and their requirements for conducting public surveys, we're probably not going to have that. They're going to do officer surveys and informal conversations, throughout the department and with some public as well. But unfortunately, a community-wide survey is not going to be done with this. So I know the city's done a community-wide survey. In general, we fared pretty great compared to some other city services at the police department. So, we hope to do more surveys in the future, but unfortunately won't be part of this.
I just want to add one more thing. The delay wasn't because of the captain or the professional standards. What I asked them to do was to make sure we gave other vendors, potential vendors, the opportunity to compete. Because I just think it's bad government when we go with the first person. Then what I didn't want to happen, somebody surfed and said, I could have did it for $20,000 cheaper, and this is why. Then that makes the chief look bad, and I didn't want to have to come back before you to explain why I didn't give them. But now we have a paper trail. We're able to show that we offered the opportunity we put it out there and waited for a reasonable amount of time for them to get back to us. So I just wanted that to be a part of the record. That was at my insistence. I had a conversation with retired Major McCoy and our professional standards. And I said, look, as the chief of police, I just want to make sure that I go on the record to say, hey, you and Captain Miguez are going to oversee this process, but I want to make sure at my level that we open it up to anybody who wanted to compete, and then we choose from whoever makes the best presentation. And so as a part, just for the record, University of Maryland was the only one that got back to us in a reasonable amount of time, and that's why they were chosen.
Thank you. My next question is the women in law enforcement. You said 77,000 was the total. You're $20,000 short. What is that cost covering, and where is it taking place?
So it was 72 that they raised, but there's about a $20,000 shortfall. And Tim Hall, since he's been doing it, he can answer those questions really well.
Yeah, oddly enough, I'm the treasurer for the women's conference. So the majority of the money is the rental of the facilities at the Westin, because they have to, rent the room. The conference requires breakfast and lunch be served to all attendees, so that's a major cost. If you've ever done a conference, when you look at the cost of the food, it's unbelievable. They do a Wednesday night formal dinner, and that's where the actual NYPD commissioners or former NYPD commissioner is going to speak. And then the Harbor Queen and a couple other events, but the majority of the money is the actual cost at the Westin, paying for the facilities and the food.
Yeah, and these are requirements from Molly. When we host the conference, they have certain requirements that they require for their conference. We take over the planning and they oversee it.
And real quick, and a few of the speakers are paid speakers.
Yeah.
But a lot of the speakers are coming, like Detective Stein. He travels the country teaching about gangs. He's doing it at no cost. There's a couple other speakers, because of it being the Molly conference, are donating their time. So with those, they're also the conference is paying for them to stay at the hotel and their flight to get here, because they're not charging. And it can be anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 to have a speaker come in that has the credentials that are coming in. It's really top-notch people coming here to speak at this conference. So it's definitely a great benefit to the attendees.
Also, I waived my fee.
We did also want to say, and we're sorry if we didn't communicate that, we welcome the women of our distinguished council to come and join us at the conference and hear, good things that are happening and new concepts and procedures that's going on in law enforcement.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And as an aside, I know what you're talking about because I'm an event planner. Yeah, that's my job. The other hat. My next question is the reorganization of the police department. Is there a time frame on that for completion?
No, ma'am, it's not a time frame per se. I estimate that we'll have intense discussions for a couple of weeks. I don't see it going past 2 weeks when we meet intermittently between their other duties. But we're going to start, I think it's tomorrow. Our first session, a serious discussion is going to occur tomorrow at 1 o'clock, I think it is, 1:30. 2:30, I'm sorry, I got everything, but so much on my calendar. But I will be there tomorrow at 2:30 to start the discussion. And then once we have the discussion tomorrow, I suspect that that's going to generate a lot of creativity, and we're going to look at everything that we do, who's doing it, everything. I want to look at everything, even the space that we have in the building. We need to reallocate that. I did a walkthrough, when was that, last Friday? I was showing you empty rooms. I did a walkthrough last Friday and I was showing the empty rooms, and I don't know why they're empty. It may be a good reason, but we're going to look at everything so that when we come back before the body in our discussions, we'll be able to talk about, you know, why we are structuring the way we are. I'm sorry, Ken.
Also, the chief wanted, we do have the workload study. And so, you know, we wanted to come together, meet, gather information, so we have it when we enter in discussions for the workload study. So all of this is all encompassing. As Captain Miguel said, we kind of gave the University of Maryland a hard, date for the study as December 31st. For a myriad of reasons, budgeting and this year for collective bargaining.
But above all, I want this to be done correctly. I don't have anything else to add other than that. But in order for this to be effective, in full disclosure, by the time we sit down and we start this process with the University of Maryland, we have to tell them what we want. We have to be able to show them a structure based on the proposed services that we want to provide. And those services will be many of the things that we talked about, and violence reduction to create the best public safety environment in terms of how we deploy our men and women on the streets to prevent these discharges. So we want to have all that in place so when we sit down to the table with them, or at least most of it in place, and so that they know what to expect from us. So we just ask them to come in and just look at historical data, then that does me no good. What I want is an org chart that I would like to see. I want the vision of the Annapolis Police. The next organizational chart that we show publicly is what we propose it to be. And I want the community and I want the council to look and say, oh, that makes sense. And here's why we want this, and here's how we're going to apply it if we're given that opportunity. So before we can do the workload analysis, we have to have an organizational chart that pretty much reflects most of what we talked about today.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Mm-hmm. My last question is in regards to the Ring Camera Neighborhood Watch program. And one of the things that probably concerns me the most is I see that there is that subsidy for the Ring cameras, but the Ring cameras, in order for them to be most effective, really have to be hardwired. As an owner of a Ring camera, I know that if I forget and I don't charge it, then it's not working for 3, 4, 5 weeks. And I see that as our biggest deterrent from actually utilizing that product. Which I guess would come on to play, like if we're putting it on public versus private property, renting versus ownership of a house. But in order for that to work, we have to require that they're hardwired. We cannot be relying on people like me to make sure that they're charged.
They are solar panel chargers that can go along with the with that system.
I tried solar power; it doesn't work. It doesn't, because if it's under a front porch and it's not being hit by the direct light, Ring sold me on solar power, and I got rid of it after a couple of months when I'm just saying, I guess that's my question is, have we looked at the possibility of having those hardwired, and does that change? It looks like the $100,000 would get us about 660 units if we were to use all $100,000 for that. But can we put into play that they have to be hardwired?
We can put into play whatever we want. That's the beauty of us all working on this together. To come together and write what that volunteer program looks like. For us. What we want people to do. Traditionally, we would like for people to say yes. It is okay for you to go in and if I sign up to get my video for a specific crime, as long as you let me know that you're taking it. And we want to talk about things like that. And I think having people like yourselves, neighborhood ambassadors, explain that other than just the police explaining it will go a long way in getting people to agree to hardwire versus battery.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. That is.
Thank you. One thing I want to mention, two things I want to mention. We'll move on to Alderman Gay. And Chief, you don't need to respond, but two things you mentioned last week when we met, an equipment audit as well as a qualifications audit that you wanted to do. So that's kind of on the radar that goes in with the workload study and everything you need to do. Alderman Gay.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I'm just looking here. They have a number of Ring cameras. So my proposal or edit to the language would just be that we don't limit it to door cameras, simple, so that they can include these spotlight cameras, et cetera, which I think would be a great benefit. And I appreciate you being a champion in that during the budget cycle. It obviously didn't pass, and less than a week later, Baltimore City passed it into effect on a much larger scale. And so I don't think that we have to put too much thought into what could or could not be effective. I think Colorado was the first place I actually seen it work. And so there are a number of programs that are already been in place. And so definitely look forward to working with you on that, and I appreciate your help. I'll jump in with my first question, which is more to do with responses to, well, let me ask this question first, just so I can be clear when I speak to the public about it as well. Do we record or do we track statistics for shots fired? Not like a killing, but like if somebody just goes out and shoots 20 times, are we tracking that, and how are we tracking it? Like, are we tracking the event and the number of casings found maybe by the officer, or?
We track every shots fired.
And where is that publicly accessible?
Yeah, there's the gun violence dashboard.
So, but when we look at it there, it doesn't.
It's all shots fired. Those are all confirmed shots fired incidents.
Okay.
On that map.
The one that was displayed on the map was only for, but I'll go back and check that. I appreciate that then.
There was an incident I know in the last week or so that we did get inquiries about. No one called us. I believe it was around 8 p.m. Was when the next day we started getting inquiries about what happened. Mm-hmm. We received no calls anywhere in the city for shots fired around that time. So, yeah, and I know we've gone over this before, but the difference between someone calling us for shots fired and then us actually having it on that map means that we discovered some physical evidence that shots were fired, whether it's a casing or damaged property. We witnessed the discharging on a surveillance camera that it happened, that someone says, yes, they were shooting. Someone reports that they were shot at. Some, because we've even had, so for instance, we had a case recently at a location where we had a call for shots fired. The officers looked in that area. They talked to people in that area. They didn't find any evidence. They had nothing else to investigate, nothing else to go on. You know, where this happened, it was a business parking lot. They went in the business, talked to the cashiers, you know, the attendants in the business. Nobody said they heard shots fired, nothing. So the officers cleared that out, and it's still a call for service that we got a report of shots fired, but the officer did what they could to confirm that it happened at that location, or they checked other locations too in case the first location was not the correct one, and nothing could confirm it. But later, detectives got information that something did happen. And they were able to, and went back to that business, and instead of just asking them if they heard something, they reviewed the video. And clearly they saw discharging happening in the parking lot. So
how does that happen that, and you don't have to get in because it may be a personal thing. How does that happen that someone is showing up to a call that shots were fired, and the only thing that happens, and I wasn't there. I don't want any officer to think that I'm, you know, I'm not a cop, so I'm not questioning anybody's response and what they do. But is there protocol in place? And that's getting into my next question as well. When a shooting takes place, are all officers that are on a shift expected to go by, you know, basically a checklist? And so like, okay, first I'll go and ask so-and-so, and then I'll go and try to find video evidence, and so that there is no delay? Or
well,
is that,
in this case, if you go inside the business and you ask them if they heard something, and you have no one reporting it happening, then our officers, that's fine. That is an acceptable way to investigate that call for service. You know, if you have the person working in that business who says they didn't hear shots in the parking lot, unless you have something else, because they did look in the parking lot too to see if they found any evidence, shell casings or anything like that, and didn't locate anything, that's a perfectly acceptable way to handle it. We're not going to demand businesses show us their surveillance photo in that case when we have nothing else to indicate that it happened. They said they didn't hear anything, you know, customers inside the business.
It's really important to understand too that a lot of times there's no checklist to go by as far as, you know, I have to do A through Z or a particular order to do it. But in many of these cases, when we go to these calls and we talk to the employee working behind the counter, quite frequently it's, I don't know how to work the camera system. I don't know how to work the camera system. So there is fairly frequently a delay in anybody being able to view it, because they typically have to wait for the business owner or manager or somebody to come into work the next day. Now, barring, you know, a homicide and, you know, evidence of it, you know, we'll start making phone calls to bosses and say, hey, look, we need this historical data sooner than later. But in this particular case, where there's nothing pointing or there's no information that supports the claim that something occurred, especially with the employees inside, we would not expect them to then.
Residential as well, I'm assuming?
And just to follow up with this, the point I was trying to make with this particular case is that we didn't take an initial report, but then we did when we got more information, and we charged someone with it. So just because a report isn't taken immediately doesn't mean that we're not going to look back at it if we get more information. And so I think that's, you know, just something I wanted to bring. Like, we're not trying to clear out shots fired calls with no report. Officers are actively doing everything they can with the information that we have to substantiate it. Like, that's the goal. The goal is not so I can clear the call and not write a report. The goal is, how can I prove that this happened? Where can I find, you know, someone who saw something? The camera operator, you know, we mentioned he usually works in the evenings. A lot of these times, these things happen in the evenings when either the camera operator is working or one of the detectives that's very familiar with the camera. You know, they'll go up if it's an area where the shots were fired, where we have camera coverage, and try and look at that if we don't have anything else. I mean, they are actively trying to find anything they can to take the report in those cases.
Awesome.
And with those, Alderman, those are usually done real time. If there's people on site that can do it while my officers in patrol are responding, either somebody from CID that's familiar with it or the camera operator are already starting to search that historical data so that we have as much information going to the scene or shortly after arriving as possible to kind of direct our investigation.
And let's be clear, I don't think anybody's not
Yeah,
taking
no,
a
I just
report or
wanna-
anything. Yeah, I'm just asking the
Yeah.
question. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, really quickly, and I'm just working my way down kind of what you all discussed today, reentry. Where is the reentry office located? I already know the answer, I think. But
So-
my thing is that not preventative in reaching the people that are most likely to need the help?
Yeah, and we've been really successful. So reentry falls under me, and it's our offices in the police department. However, most of the time, people aren't in the office. We talk about gun violence response. There's short term, which is what we've seen recently, but the long term things are the things that we've had in place, for years, and that we continue to improve on and try and find the best solutions. And a lot of the long-term prevention to gun violence is not necessarily police related programs, but I think our reentry program has been really successful in getting people into job training. We've also done a number of relocations relating to gun violence. Families that have been victimized, people don't realize that until someone is charged with a crime, people aren't eligible for a lot of the victim funds that are out there. So if we are unsuccessful in our investigation and aren't able to bring charges against someone, there's a lot of resources that aren't available to these families who are victimized. So we've assisted both the state's attorney's office and just on our own behalf, some of these community members who don't feel safe where they are. If we can get them out of a community, then we do our best to do that, whether it's renting a moving van and helping them get their stuff, transferring vouchers. When they've been a victim of a crime, they shouldn't have to wait until we can charge someone to get those resources.
Of course, and I appreciate that. And at a later date, because I don't think anybody could do so now, would you be able to provide a breakdown of how much of the funding that the police department gets is geared towards some of these social programs? Because I agree with the chief, and when he states it all the time, that poverty breeds crime. I think that the reason, and one of the things that bothers me is like, everybody's like, well, Ward 6 has the most crime, and, Ward 6 is the most troublesome community. Well, no duh. If you put 5,000 people with an average income of $15,000 in one area with communities that are blighted, no social resources for decades, you're going to have a lot of crime. And so I'm always curious to see how the city budget reflects that, and understanding that, we do have to be able to provide services for that. And which goes into my next question, and I'm just jumping around, but I appreciate it very much. The grant managing. Did I hear that right correctly, that you are temporarily swapping, some maybe funds that had been frozen, positions that have been frozen, just until they get through with the workload study?
Somewhat, yes. That's what we're looking at, is an employment agreement, a contractual position in the meantime. And hopefully we can get that full-time and filled as soon as possible.
Awesome, thank you so much. With the marijuana training, you said that you would be sending out, flyers or publications to the public. I think that would be great. What is your general message to officers on? Now, obviously, there's a difference between, if I pull some, because, and this is one of the things that confused me with the state, and I know there's a chief that was on the news from the state of Maryland saying, well, we're gonna, arrest people and we're coming up with a way to do DUIs for marijuana. Tell me how you can do that without, if you pull someone over and the car is gaping with smoke, obviously I'm inclined to believe that you were smoking while driving. If I pull you over, there is no smoke, there's the stint of marijuana in your vehicle, and I'm searching you, and at this point you do have marijuana on you, but it's within the legal amount. I'm almost not understanding why we're even citing. I know some chiefs have taken it into their own discretion to not even cite for policies like that. I'm considering, particularly because there are often in minority communities with people who don't have access to the funding to pay the citation. So is that something that?
So you have a lot of questions in that. Can you just?
Okay, well, yeah, are officers being instructed to cite?
If there's a violation of law, yes, we expect them to enforce it.
And so,
with regards to driving under the influence or under the influence of the marijuana, that is something we have to look into as far as the specialized training that comes with that for DUI enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
It would be treated no different than any other DUI with alcohol or a combination of drugs. Those laws already exist for driving under the influence of alcohol or drugs or a combination of both. So the enforcement effort would be similar to that. There would be really no difference in how we enforce that. It would be how we investigate it would be slightly different.
We do want you to understand that the law is clear, that odor alone cannot precipitate a stop. So if you're saying that, we stop somebody because we smelled it, we've already instructed our people that you can't stop somebody because you smell it. It has to be the smell and the overt act. You crossed right of center. You ran a stop sign. You did this and we smell the odor. Then we would say, we're going to look at you for
impairment.
Driving.
So how are you measuring that? Thank you so much, Captain. How do you measure impairment of? It's not like alcohol, as you.
So it's there already are drug recognition experts.
Okay.
So that's a training that officers go through. We all, at least I think most of us, get training in DUI detection, standardized field sobriety testing that is done to people who are suspected to be under the influence of alcohol and driving. So the specialized training for officers is DRE, drug recognition expert. And what they do is basically a series of tests similar to the field sobriety tests for alcohol, but it's looking for signs of impairment from other means, illegal drugs, whether illegal or prescription, because obviously people can drive under the influence of prescription medication as well. So, we have had DRE experts. It's a very rigorous training, and it requires a lot of follow-up training, and then they can issue an opinion whether the person's impaired, but they also do a blood test if the person consents. And that blood test, you're perfectly right. When it comes to marijuana, it's very hard to show from a blood test, is that impairment, Well,
that's what concerns me, just getting into the legalities of all of that. And
it's going to be something that the, Maryland State Judicial, the courts are going to get into.
Yeah.
We have the DRE program. So say tonight there's an officer witnesses some
so that's already
indicators of, impaired driving, violations, pulls the car over, doesn't smell any alcohol, but smells weed. The person in their interactions seems impaired. They would contact a DRE, which there's a statewide response system for those officers trained that way to come out. That officer would respond. That officer would do those sobriety tests, and they would issue an opinion on that, and then it would go to court. And that's what it's going to take to kind of figure this stuff out.
Okay, Chief.
No, I was going to say that's on my list of things to do. I'm sitting here listening, and it's been on my mind. What I don't want to do is our officers because the legislation wasn't well thought out.
I agree.
And I'm not here to discuss the merits of whether it should be legal or illegal. But what I don't want to happen is I don't want either side of the fence to be harmed. I don't want, particularly in minority communities, to be targeted and then be the guinea pigs and be the test cases for overzealous policing. What I won't have under my leadership is the officers at their level interpreting the law. That's not their role. So I say all that to say that I think you asked some very good questions, and what we need to do is have a discussion with the state's attorney and a discussion with the judiciary, because I think Stevie Wonder will be able to see, based on how things are crafted now, officers are going to get caught in the middle trying to do what the public thinks is right, and then public sentiment will vilify the officer. So I have so much on my plate, but at the chief's level, we're going to have to come up with a directive with real good consultation over this marijuana issue, because alcohol is a blood-borne pathogen, if you will. In other words, we can readily available through machinery to measure somebody's BAC and make a determination real quickly. Marijuana is a little bit trickier than that, and what I don't want to happen is for us to fly the plane while we're building it, because then all the social capital that I've built up since I've been the police chief, all it takes is one incident for all that to go down the window. And I don't want Harbor House or Robinwood or Eastport Terrace or any other place, Oldbury Court or any other place, Clay Street, to go up in flames over a marijuana issue where the legislation is not clear. So I'll say this, Alderman Gay, I talked to some of my colleagues the other day, colleagues being other chiefs who feel the same way. So what we're going to do is we're going to all meet and then get the prosecutor to weigh in, and then I'll come back and then I'll share that information with the men and women, how we're going to move forward. But just like some of the provisions in other recent legislation, I'm not casting aspersions on anybody. They enacted this, and there's a whole lot of logistics in law enforcement. Now, I'll end by saying this: when it's obvious that the person shouldn't be operating a vehicle, then they won't operate it. I can justify that. I think a rookie out the academy can, when their eyes are glassy and all that kind of stuff. That don't mean the rest should be the first response. If we're not prepared to go into a court of law and justify what we did. We're just going to say, no, you're not driving that car. And that's my job, to back my officers on that. You look too inebriated, you don't have to arrest them and send them to Jennifer Road, but you're not driving that car. It's dangerous to operate that car. You come back and get it tomorrow. Until we get clear direction, and there's no clear direction from the state of Maryland, then what I don't want is my commanders and my officers and my supervisors to be put in legal jeopardy over something that wasn't well thought out by the legislature. And I hope I haven't offended anybody.
No, I agree with that. And that's why I asked the question, because I had the same concern. I'm like, so now we're leaving it up to officers to test or to apply metrics to something that stays in your system at a much longer rate than any traditional drug. And so it was very confusing. But
real quick,
okay,
just to kind of assuage some of your fears, those processes have been in place for a long time. There are processes like Captain Miguez is talking about with the DRE. Mm-hmm. There are steps that have to be taken before we get to that measurable test that they do. It would be treated like any other DUI.
And all officers do the DRE?
No, that's a specialized training that nobody in this agency, I believe, currently is certified. But just to kind of put your not fears to rest, but your questions, is that how we handle DUIs with marijuana involvement is no different than we handled them 10, 15, 20 years ago. We've handled them the same way since I've been employed here almost 29 years ago. There's nothing in the legislature that's crafting it new. There may be some new training that comes out that says, hey, these are more, directly related to DUI impairment, things to look for, cues to look for with that. But it all falls under the DUI provisions that we've been operating under for many, many years. So there's nothing different in that aspect. How you test for it is, how you test for it is different.
I have two quick questions, because we got like 5 minutes. The cameras. And so, where do we stand currently with, obviously we had, two back-to-back budgets now where there were significant allocations for, updating CCTV, et cetera. Where do we stand with that? I'm curious to know that you mentioned, and I'm so sorry, I forgot your name.
Tim Hall.
Tim Hall,
Yeah.
Mr. Hall. So there's only one of you right now that's operating in the evening hours, so there's not a team that's like rotating 24/7 for operation of cameras?
So there's two things, Alderman Gaines, so you're confusing them. There
Okay.
is the body-worn camera unit, which Tim Hall supervises. That is him and a team of one. We hope to bring on another individual to make three.
Okay.
And then there is our camera watch program, which we currently have one person. We're hiring another person who is due to start this week.
Well, his contract, we're waiting to get his contract
Back signed.
Yeah, yeah.
And so we would like for him to start this week. And then we are going to be sending another contract in. We're looking for another person, for another two people. One for a midnight shift. And then, of course, individuals take leave. They get time off or whatever. You need a fourth person as a bridge, person. So you can have a 7-day a week continuous viewing of the camera. And what we plan to do is utilize some of our vacant positions just for the budget cycle. But, we are telling you this because we want you to support our enhancement to hire them as a full-time measure.
Absolutely.
And as far as the cameras go, the citywide cameras, they fall under information technology, not the police department. We do not manage their budget. We don't manage their installation. We don't manage their maintenance. We utilize them, but there are 391 citywide cameras. And we don't monitor all of them because that would be a lot. And a lot of them are on city buildings, as well as the ones that we have in communities. So we talk with them weekly about them because right now there's about 41 that are currently not functioning. There are communities where they haven't been able to implement them yet because of different challenges with fiber optics and BG&E working with us. And so really would, urge you to invite Brian Paquin to come and give you guys an update on the finances of those and the management of those cameras.
In fact, Brian would mind me saying this. I spoke to Brian Paquin about that, and I said, Mr. Paquin, you really need to talk to the council or accompany us. I've invited them to accompany us and speak to that, but I told him, and I believe he said, and I don't want to misquote him, that if you guys summons them, they will come. That's a discussion that, like the captain said, I would encourage you. But I've already laid the groundwork because I approached them about it, I think a month ago, about speaking about that issue.
Awesome. That'll be great. I feel like, this was pretty decent. I definitely appreciate the updates. I like the program that you've implemented. I've already got feedback from some residents. They're like, I've never seen 2 cops out on the street, and I've lived here for 7 years. And so obviously you deploying now all of these more officers it's noticeable. People are paying attention. Obviously, people are also seeing the news with the individual arrested who terrorized our community, which is really good. And so all of those things are appreciated.
And I want to, this won't be long, and along those lines, you just prompted me to say something. This is a true story. I met today with, like I said, some of the police chiefs around the agency, and I told my troops this the other day, and I meant to say this. You know what the biggest frustration for chiefs all over America is? First line supervision. Those guys and girls will be out there, but they need to take the direction of the guys who wear the stripes and the bars. They need to make them do it. So it does us no good to sit here and talk about visibility and officers walking foot, and then, we're commanders. We need to have some type of inspection to make sure, and I know we talked about that through the body-worn camera footage, that when we tell you to be on Madison Street walking foot, we mean being on Madison Street. I can talk to the food workers union some other time, but right now we got shots being discharged and we have volatile weekends. Then we need you, because you took an oath. Right? You took an oath. If air traffic controllers got frustrated because they were burnt out, if surgeons got burned out, if technicians got burned out, then all of us would be dead. Well, we can't call ourselves professional police if we just can't dig deep and find a way to be out there. So I want them out there on foot. You made my day.
Well, I was going to say, it's not going unnoticed. Everybody is
you made my day
talking about it. And so,
yes, sir.
I get the shooting thing is tough, and I think obviously the panic in the last couple of weeks is because it was so consistent. We didn't really know what was going on, and I think the thing that the public should know, and kind of what puts me to rest, is that you are solving most of it, I believe. At least that's what I see, and so I don't know how you just have to communicate that some way, because it's just not clicking. And that's what's causing the paranoia for real. I think when this most recent outbreak happened, that was probably the most actively involved I think I've even seen us from a legislator's perspective, trying to seek out alternative ways to assist the department. With the drone meetings and the ring stuff, and just people researching other methods of how the police departments are working in different areas. And so I think all hands are on deck. I appreciate it very much. Last question, does the police department have a budget to contract out for patrol? And I'm asking that because we obviously can't have the expectation that our leadership team and the people that are doing camera work, et cetera, are going to be on the streets every day. And so is there a budget at some point where you could use your discretion as a police chief and say, hey, look, I know, we need like 2 or 3 more officers here in Eastport Terrace or Harbor House. Can we do, 6 months at like $180,000 of partnering with this, team that I trust as a chief? Is that something that you?
Yes, I'll address that question because it goes back what we asked the sheriff. I had a meeting with Sheriff Sesker a couple weeks ago, and Captain Howard was involved in that. We signed a memorandum of understanding that we would help pay their overtime if they was to agree to come in and help us. The overtime expenditures would come out of our budget because they have the same authority as we have. Really, they have more. They have civil authority. And so I signed a MOU last week. It's in the Office of Law now just to evaluate it for legal sufficiency. But you had a conversation with him last night, and he thought that his officers were still responding until we got, because we were both of the mindset, we want to be in compliance, but we're not going to wait for the Office of Law. That'll catch up with us. And I know I'm getting myself in trouble, but we need to have people out there to protect these neighborhoods because they're still sworn police. And so this memorandum of understanding is just a formality. I mean, it's a necessary formality, but we don't want to wait. I don't want to have a homicide and say we were waiting on an MOU. Just like I tell my troops all the time, you get a call for a parking complaint, that damn parking complaint can wait if it takes an officer out of a neighborhood and then we have a shooting. I don't want to come before you and say we would have prevented that murder if we didn't even go handle that parking complaint. So dispatch has to put that aside. We'll get back to that parking complaint later. That's the same analogy we took for our meeting with Sheriff Sesker, and he's willing and able to assist us in our strategy. So what has to happen is that we have to stabilize certain neighborhoods. Once you stabilize, it's just like in the military, and I'm not comparing it to a military occupancy, but once we do the other things, we can start to scale back. We shouldn't have to hold this forever, but we need to hold it for the rest of the summer while we take the time to evaluate the neighborhoods and forge the right partnerships. And then when we see a change in the neighborhood and dismantle some of these groups, then we can gradually pull back our deployment. So, because sometimes I tell people this all the time, and it doesn't set well with a lot of my colleagues, but sometimes we can contribute to crime by what we don't do. Or how we deploy, and that's what I don't want. So this visibility is designed so that we don't have to react to so much. A lot of people go to jail because it's convenient for them to commit crimes if they don't see us. If we're not visible and we're not engaging them, then it opens up the door for them to take advantage of that, and that's what we don't want to do. So this deployment is only designed while we continue to strategize each day. That's what a command staff is supposed to be. It's supposed to advise the chief, come up with ideas, and then once the neighborhoods are stabilized, and we are working on some people, that's another story, to dismantle some of these groups and identify some of these trigger pullers, then we can gradually pull back. But then we have to replace it with programs. Does that make sense? Once the police start pulling out, then they have to have some hope and some programs to offset our withdrawing the deployment. Thanks for listening to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. I'm going to take a matter of personal privilege. I think a couple of things that should be noted here that we need to realize and recognize, as well as the public. And first of all, I want to thank my colleagues here on the public safety team who are always on it, have great questions, work diligently on this, because this isn't easy. Friday, July the 14th, we had our Facebook Live every other week broadcast, and the chief outlined his Annapolis Police Department plan, and I also put forth a public safety plan, a draft of which I shared with my colleagues here about that. It's something that I had a meeting with the mayor and the chief of staff about on yesterday. Next thing I want to mention is there should be brought to the attention of everyone. This command staff here has over 200 years of law enforcement experience. I think we need to take note of that. These are people who have done this job in various jurisdictions, who have done it extremely well, and I think we need to recognize those years of experience, and it shows when we have meetings like this, along with recognizing that social programs, social services, and our Premier Reentry Program is all a part of this. Normally, I don't toot my own horn, and I don't want to, but I want to say working with this group of professionals is really a pinnacle in being on this council. I had 20 and a half years of public safety as a prosecutor in Baltimore City and retired there as a prosecutor. 12 years of those, I was the Deputy Juvenile Courts Division Chief during that time, supervising 20 attorneys, 15 support staff, and hundreds of persons that I trained. 8 years I spent in the child abuse unit, and I also trained officers at the police academy. So I think we do have a stellar group right here of folks who know the work, know their job, and we need to recognize what they do. And oftentimes we need to also realize that they know more about it than we do. They've done it, they know it. Not that we can't give suggestions, which is what I do sometimes, and sometimes the chief will say, I say, okay. But no, we need to recognize that these folks are trained in that. We're all trained in something. And I think it behooves us to realize that when they bring to us something, that we need to really take notice of it. We all have our lanes that we are very familiar with. Alderwoman O'Neill brought up the fact that she knows catering inside and out. I'd be remiss to try to tell her how to cater an affair. That I can't do that. I'm going to listen to hear what she has to say about that. And I think we need to do more of that when it comes to our professionals within city government who do it each and every day. We don't. That's why they're hired. And I think that needs to be said here. And thank you all so very, very, very much. For those who've been doing it a couple of months, you still know more than we do. But those who've done it for years, I think it's worth noting. And I think the public needs to hear that as well. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Much appreciated. Thank
And
you.
this was noted also on the Facebook Live on Friday.
Okay. And thank you to the aldermen, too. Thank you, Alderman Gay, and
Great
thank you, Alderman O'Neill. Thank you all, but thank you, Madam Chair.
Ever so briefly, Alderman Gay, I sent you a copy of the most recent gun violence dashboard, which you can find all the time at our website, annapolis.gov/police. It's on the top left side, I think. But I just sent you the latest one, which is updated today.
Can I hear a motion to adjourn here at 5:39 PM?
So moved.
Motion to, second.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Meeting adjourned. Thank you all again.
Thank you.